We covered most of Duff chapter 5 in thinking about the form and use of the adjective generally, but there are a couple of bits and pieces that need tidying up in order to understand the chapter as a whole. These are what we cover in this video. The first topic is part of the verb to be. This is irregular in most languages, and Greek is no exception. The form is Amy, a, Esti, Esmen, Esther, AC. Now, if you look in Duff, you will also see movable news. So again, both of those forms could have a new at the end, but needn't. Although it's hideously irregular in many ways, you've still got things like the men and the te in there that you should recognise from luor. Luor, luesre, luor men, luer te, luusi. That C as well just about fits in that category. So they are irregular, but it's actually not completely irregular. If anyone is interested, I can give you a rundown in how actually this is a completely irregular verb that just displays various forms of sound change from the Indo-European original. It's a fascinating process, and if anyone knows Latin in particular, there is a direct relationship between them that I'm happy to talk about, but realise is irrelevant for most of you. More useful is thinking about how it's used. And there are 3 points that are worth taking away from this chapter. First of all is it's not always there. If you have a sentence without a verb, try adding this verb. It's quite common for it to be omitted, particularly when you're talking about X is Y. You just put the two things together and expect people to make the connection between them. Much more interesting is the preparatory use. This is once upon a time, there was. A little cottage in the wood. This is how you might start off a parable, for example, and it'll be very normal for you to see there was or there is starting off a kind of parable story narrative where the esti is going to be the first word in the sentence, setting things up. So we've talked about Greek word order a little bit, and we'll do so a bit more in this video, but unusually if you see estin at the beginning of a sentence, think there is, there was, there are, there were, depending on the number, and then start filling in all the rest of your nouns. Don't try and go X is Y. And the final part of this is the complementary use. Notice that's complement with an E. This is about completing things. So this would be the kind of example you had is the man is a farmer. Or indeed, the word was God. If you think about parts of speech, these are all nouns. This is the subject, and this is the complement, or it might be called predicate as well. It's filling the sentence and equating the two halves of it. The man equals farmer. The word equals God. Now that's not the same thing as saying the farmer is a man, necessarily. So word order does matter here. In Greek, the article is going to be with the subject. And if a noun is being used in the position of an adjective, so as a complement, then it's going to have no article. You'll get used to seeing this as you read the New Testament more, but it is something worth bearing in mind. Two slightly irregular adjectives, polis and megas. First thing I'd like you to do, and I'm going to build a word cloud of these from a quiz embedded in Canvas, is think of any derivations. Polis means much or many. Megas means big. Stop now and put in as many derivations as you can think of in, say, 10 to 20 seconds. Then return to the video. What do you notice? You might notice that the majority of the derivations you come across, and I will add the word clouds to Canvas so you can see each other's work, have poly or mega as their root. In fact, there are very few examples that don't. In fact, the stem is pol with two L's and megal with an extra L in it. And that might give you something like megalomaniac. So it does exist as a root there, but it's not one of the more common ways of thinking of mega. So polis and megas actually have a stem with an extra L in it. In the nominative and accusative, masculine singular, there is the shortened stem. If you're reading Greek into English, you'll probably find those nominative and accusative masculine and neuter singulars fairly straightforward. It might be the extended ones with the two L's or the al in it that you find harder. If you're doing English into Greek, then it's something you need to pay careful attention to because it's an easy mistake to make. Finally, word order. First of all, the usefulness of endings. We can write ton, logon, ho, theos, lege. That still means God says the word, not the word says God, because ton logon is always going to be accusative and ho theos is always going to be nominative. So first of all, word order can be a really variable thing and can allow you to make a kind of literary point. The word is what God says. You could emphasise that with your word order. Grammatically, you're always going to find your way around the sentence because it's always going to be visible in the inflection. You can also play around with things. So, akur ton logon tu theou, I hear the word of God. The word of God, whose word is it? It's the word of God. So the word of God is describing the word. So you might want to put it in the adjective position. And then you get ton tu theou logon. And you get this weird situation where you get two articles next to each other. And this is called a genitive sandwich. The genitive is describing the noun in some way. And so it goes in the normal descriptive word order position between the article and the noun. If you have a look in the textbook, on page 61, heading over into 62, there are a few more examples of this. The genitive sandwich is the one you really need to be comfortable with because this is going to be the one you see frequently. So please bear in mind this possibility of the genitive as a descriptive term to go in the descriptive adjective word order position and get used to seeing it when we're reading the text.